Welcome to Write Books That Sell Now, the podcast helping you write, publish, and market your book faster, better, and smarter. Here are your hosts, working hard and having fun doing it, Candace L. Davis, Anita Henderson, and Carol Dunlop.
Welcome to Write Books That Sell Now, the podcast that gives you real insight into the real world of becoming a successful self-published author. I'm Candace L. Davis, and as always, I'm here with my co-host in success and sometimes partners in crime, Anita Henderson and Carol Dunlop. Hey, ladies.
Hey, what's up? What's up?
This is going to be a really great episode. I'm excited about this one because we're dipping into something a little different. Anyone who knows us knows that we love the world of independent publishing. We think that self-publishing offers a lot of advantages, but that doesn't mean that we've turned our backs on traditional publishing. And we know that a lot of authors do a little bit of both. They're doing a hybrid kind of writing career now. So today we have brought on a wonderful guest, literary agent Janell, and she's going to give you some insights into what that world really looks like. I think there are a lot of myths about the world of traditional publishing, some of which I used to believe myself. So it'll be great for her to dispel those for us. But first, before we get to our guest, Carol, what's on your mind today?
Well, hey, everyone, and thanks very much for that awesome introduction, Candace, Anita, and Janell. What's on my mind is working hard. Not hardly working, but working hard.
Again.
I actually sent out a email to my list this morning. I am back into working out. I have let myself go too long. It may not look like it, but I have. I've been working long days and not enough working out. So this morning, I got up early and I worked out. I am feeling it already. But it kind of triggered something about how hard are you really willing to work to get done what you need to get done. You know, I used to be a personal trainer. I talk about it every now and then. And when I used to sit down with a client, a potential client, I'd always say, you know, if you want to lose weight and get yourself together, get healthy, you got to do 4 things. You got to, work out 30 minutes. You got to do cardio 30 minutes every day for 5 days. You got to do strength training 30 minutes 3 times a week. You got to eat 5 to 6 meals a day. And you have to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. Without those 4 things in place, you're not going to get what you want with your healthiness and getting yourself back. It's true. It's all true. But when we look at our businesses, what is it that we're willing to do? How hard are we really willing to work to get it done? Do we have to do Facebook Lives? Do we have to do advertising, including Facebook and Google and Twitter or anybody that has ads? Are we willing to email our list enough so that they get the information that they need without us feeling like, oh my God, I'm bugging them? What are the things that we are really willing to do? And sometimes it looks like it's oh my God, I can't do one more thing. Or sometimes it looks like, oh my God, do I really have to do all this? But the answer is YES, yes, you got to do all that stuff. Because if you look at it, the big successful companies, not just the big gurus, but the big successful companies do all this stuff behind the scenes, and you don't even know they're doing it. I mean, if you were on a job right now, going in, working your 9 to 5, you'd have just a job that you were doing. Maybe it's putting paper clips in a cup. I don't know. Maybe that would be your job all day long, but that's the little piece that you do. But when you're working for yourself, your own business, you got all the jobs. You got everything. So you got to do it. So how hard are you really willing to work? Because I see a lot of people, a lot of potential business owners, potentially successful business owners who are whining and complaining about having to do certain things, having to go this long, having to do that, having to do this, blah, blah, blah. And they're not being successful, but they're not doing the things that they need to do to be successful. Same thing.
So on the other side, on the flip side, Carol, I see a lot of entrepreneurs doing a lot of busy work, but perhaps not seeing the results from all of that stuff that they're doing. So I think there's a balance. I do agree that as entrepreneurs, we've got work to do. There's things that need to be done. And for the most part, you're the one who's going to do it. But I think that we certainly need to look at what's most productive and focused on our results and our outcomes rather than just doing stuff. Like I've been on this this focus of not saying the busy word, be. Like, ask people, oh, how's it going today? How you been doing? Oh, I'm so busy. I'm up to here with people telling me how busy they are.
Right.
Doing things is just part of what we do as entrepreneurs, but how productive are you being? How much results are you seeing from all this busyness that you're doing? So yeah, you got to work, but you got to see some results. And of course, my thing is you got to have some kind of plan and know why you're doing all these things that you're doing. Otherwise, you're just doing stuff because you think it's impressive to other people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Got to have a strategy.
I'm also a huge fan of outsourcing. We don't have to do everything. So when it's time for me to set up a sales page, I can jump on Lead Pages and do it, but I don't anymore. I write the copy and I send it over to a wonderful young lady I found on Fiverr who for $15 will make my lead page look very pretty, use whatever colors I ask her to use. I send her my little style sheet, and it's a style sheet with like 3 things on it, you guys. I'm not fancy.
Style guide.
my three-line style guide. So, I send it over to her because my time can be best served doing something else. And what she can do,
right? You're a writer.
And I'm a writer. I'm not a designer. And so for her, it probably takes her 15 minutes to set it up. It would probably take me 3 hours to set it up. So it's worth the $15, but it's not just in your business. It's the same thing with authors, because we see, how many authors do we see who get through the writing process? They've got a lovely book in their hand, and then they don't want to do the things they have to do to get that book out to readers. They're scared to market the book. They can't figure out what thing they should do, or they take the scattershot approach and try to do everything. They've got to find that middle space where you pick what works for you. If you don't want to go on the speaking circuit, don't do it, but you have to do something to sell your book.
Absolutely. And whether you are an independent published author or a traditionally published author, either way, you're going to have to do something with your book yourself once it's published. And that's the marketing part. And we talk about that in the Write Books That Sell Now program. For those of you, you should be familiar with us by now. If you've been listening for a while, you can always find us and more information about our programs and services at writebooksthatsellnow.com. But today we're excited to welcome our guest to the podcast. Janell Agyeman is an agent with Marie Brown Associates, where she represents a diverse roster of authors who write for young readers and for young adults. Her clients include New York Times bestselling author Sharon M. Draper and Pulitzer Prize winning Leonard M. Pitts Jr. In 2013, she was named Agent of the Year by Black Pearls Literary Magazine. She previously has held editorial positions at Doubleday and Company and at the Howard University Press, which is amazing, where she also administered the Howard University Press Book Publishing Institute. So she knows her stuff. Her writing credits include the media and sports chapters in the groundbreaking project Contributions of Black Women in America, 1777 to 1976. And in addition to her literary agency work, she provides consulting services and educational outreach targeting new and emerging writers. And I am super excited to welcome Janell Agyeman to the Write Books That Sell Now podcast. Welcome.
Thank you very much. This is
great to have you here.
I'm delighted to be with you three. I'm so impressed with what you've done, the services that you are providing to so many who need the service. Oh boy.
They need it. They need the insight. Yeah, they absolutely do.
Absolutely do, because what you all don't see, I see.
Oh,
yes, I do. Yes, I do. Because everybody, I don't care if they do it themselves, everybody has that little spark somewhere where they say, I want to be published, for those who want to be published. And the dream seems to have been, or seems still to be for most, I want somebody else to publish me. You want that ego boost. And
yes,
there's a whole lot to that.
And do you think that's what it is mostly for people? Is it an ego boost or is it something else?
At core, I think there's a lot of that going on, yes, because you look at it, we each have a story. We live our stories, and we each have something to share. But of course, it goes beyond that. I'm trying to put a little levity in it, but rarely a day goes by that I don't receive inquiries from people who want to be published. And I'm not criticizing that. That's That's part and parcel of what I do and why I'm here, to entertain those queries and to see who it is that I can help. But there are so many who come and who aren't ready, haven't thought about the process at all, and who have not considered in which stream of publishing their work would be most aptly matched. Mm-hmm. And it's in one of the questions that I had shared with you that I hope you'll ask me, but it has to do with people jumping out of the gate before they're ready. And not only that, they come to me, and you ladies know this. I think that you have encountered this. They'll come to me or someone like me with a book that I have just published, and can't you help me? And what they want is for me to flip it to a conventional publisher and get a deal so that they can get paid, and they don't have to do the work. That is the misinformation.
So let's back up a little bit, Janell. Tell us exactly what a literary agent is. What do you do for your clients?
As a literary agent, my primary task is to, number one, place books with conventional publishers. I'm the one who you come to if you want a deal, essentially. And you're counting on my knowledge of that marketplace and my connections within that marketplace to take your book to the right person and to secure that deal, which is an offer of publication. And within the traditional or conventional arena, as you may know, writers are paid in advance. They receive some funds up front, which are actually an advance against the royalties that are expected to be earned on the book once it is published.
So you negotiate that deal then?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I find it, I negotiate it, and I'm there with the author from the beginning until as a interlocutor, as an advocate.
Okay.
As one who can help translate what's going on and to actually represent the author as best I can for whatever situations may arise. Sometimes we're just hand-holding. That's part of the process, and I don't mind that at all. Other times it's to be an advocate, a fierce advocate. Say, for instance, when a cover design is offered, and many times they have nothing to do with the book. They, in fact, misrepresent the book. That doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And many times it's good that we're there and can speak the language of the publisher in order to advocate for a revision of that. Okay. And it comes, those kinds of things come up. But that's what we do. We are not publicists. We are not promoters. We do it as in the course of doing what we do. Anywhere I go, I'm going to tell people, this is one of my books. This is an author. I think you should pay attention. That kind of thing. But people sometimes also seek me out, asking me for help in promoting their work, and that is not what the literary agent does. It's a similar skill set, but it's not the same as one who is trained in reaching out to media and other resources for attention.
So let's get back to that concept of readiness in terms of when an author is ready. What are you looking for an author to be actually ready to be presented to a publishing house?
First and foremost, they need to have an idea and a presentation that I believe I can sell to the publisher. This means that the topic of the book is something that I can see working for a national distribution, because the conventional publishers are all looking for national products. And I know our writers love their books, and to hear me call it a product may feel, it may not feel comfortable.
We call it a product too, because that's what it is.
Right, we're on the same page. But if there's anyone in the audience who has not heard that term, get over it. This is, books.
Reality check, everybody.
Right. Publishing is a business, and there's so many books coming that we can't always remember the titles and keep up with them as we speak in the aggregate. But we are interested in books that can sell, just as you are. But for the conventional publishers, they deal with a huge distribution apparatus, and the biggest component of that these days is Amazon. Everybody has to deal with Amazon, no matter whether you're self-published or conventional. But anyway, my point is, the topic of the book, if it is nonfiction, must be something that can work for a mass audience. That's what the conventional publishers are looking for. What does mass mean? At least 10 to 20,000 copies of the book selling within 1 year, maybe 2, but it depends on the size of the company. For a small independent firm, 5 to 10,000 might might be viewed as realistic or attractive. And for the bigger houses, the so-called legacy publishing companies, of which there are 5 now who have consumed so many other of the smaller firms, they're looking for upwards of 10 to 20,000 a year out of the gate. That doesn't sound like much in a country of what are we, close to 400 million people now?
Right.
But when you look at who's buying books and how many books are sold in a year, that's a big number and it's hard to reach. So how much of a reach does the topic have? Is it timely? Does it make sense in view of everything else that's going on? Can the person write well? Do they present well? That's often a challenge too. Believe it or not, people think that they're ready and they approach me without having edited their work or having someone else will edit.
No, say it isn't so. They don't do that, do they?
I see it in the query letter, which is the first thing I see. It's the cover letter that you send to me or any other agent asking, would you be interested? That's essentially what it is. You're pitching and you're giving me enough of you for me to make a decision as to whether or not I want to see anymore. And sadly, many of those letters are not written with a lot of thought as to how they fit into the scheme of things. They don't tell me who knows you, for instance. If you've never been published before, I need to know that, but why do you think you're ready for big time now, so to speak? And there are ways to do that. So at any rate, the topic of the work needs to be something that's right for the market. And I'm looking for that based upon what I know. And now I'm speaking of nonfiction. For fiction, similar rules apply. If it is a fiction project, even if it's beautifully written, the question becomes, what's the hook? How do I pitch it? And if it's a wonderful coming of age story, what about it makes a different, gives it a difference in this busy world? What about it stands out? Is it the composition of the characters? Is their motivations? I don't know. But always we're looking for what's unique, what's outstanding, because the world is so noisy. And you all know well, and I'm sure your dedicated viewers and your audience knows well, that we're competing with everything. With what used to be called television, and now it's something else. It's, with all of the film and screen products, we're dealing with the video games. We're competing with everything in a world where many people don't have as much time as maybe we thought we had 40 or 50 years ago, when life appeared to move more slowly. So I've mentioned briefly topic, audience size, and whether you think your book can reach a great number of people. And then the last thing that comes up is, who are you and what do you bring to it? Even if you're new, what everybody's going to be looking for is, how connected are you? What is your platform? Is that a term you use with your clients? The platform?
Anita does all the time.
Okay.
We look at it in a couple of ways. We look at platform in a couple of ways, not just your platform, like your social media, your outreach to people in that traditional sense, but also your platform, specifically when we're dealing with the types of authors we deal with mostly, which is nonfiction, business focused. Like, what are you known for in your business sphere?
Yes.
That platform also. So you've got to be known as something or known for a particular thing. And then perhaps hopefully you're writing a book to support that. And also platform in terms of the reach that you have and how you extend yourself to that identified audience.
Absolutely. So it's the same. It's just a difference of scale, perhaps. Yeah. And the other part of that is, can you demonstrate to me, maybe not in the initial query, but at some point down the line, if I'm attracted to you, I want to know, do you have the energy to do what needs to be done? Because a lot of people, unfortunately, still think that if you are published by a conventional house, that they're going to do all the work for you. No. And Candace, you mentioned that earlier, that that you've got to have the energy, you've got to have the desire, because they don't do it. They step it up if your book takes off. and meets expectations or exceeds expectations, then all kinds of resources can be provided for you. But in the beginning, there's a certain baseline of support that you receive, which is pretty much what anybody else on the list gets. And you have to be the one to power the engine and make it go forward.
Good deal.
And I would say if a person doesn't intend to do that or doesn't wish to do that, and when I say that, it's in quotes, because as you mentioned already, Anita, it could be public speaking and the kind of outreach you're going to do by showing up. It could be all of the social media. It could be working that network that you have through the organizations that you belong to, and powering up everything. If it's all of that, or if it's a portion of that, whatever it is, you have to be committed to doing it. If you're not, don't come to me, because I can't sell you to a publisher. A few years ago, I could. A number of years ago, I could, but things have changed.
Not now.
It looks like, again, it's how hard are you really willing to work to make this a success? It just looks like everything you're doing, you're having to work at it. It doesn't matter if it's your business, your book, your life, whatever. You got to, you don't get a pass to sit on the bench and watch life pass you by and then say, I'm a success. You really have to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I could basically sit here and listen to this all day, Janell, because these are the things that when we try to tell authors, I'm not sure they actually believe us. I think they sometimes think that they're going to be the exception in this equation, that they're going to get a book deal that's going to pay a 6-figure advance, and the publishers are going to go out and do all this promotion for them, and it's going to be, they're just going to sit at home at their desk and pet their cat all day while the publisher does the work. So I'm glad that you're here to tell them that's not the truth. But you had mentioned earlier a couple of the variables in the negotiation process when you're advocating for your authors. What are some of the other variables? Obviously, the money is the bottom line for a lot of people, but you had also mentioned things like cover design. What are some of the variables that go into that contract with a big publisher?
Wow, that's a big question. What do you mean? The things that someone like me could negotiate, or the things that the author needs to be most concerned about?
Either or both.
A combination of both.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, we're looking for enthusiasm. That's what I look for anyway. I have done deals. I mean, I've been in the game for quite a number of years. And when I was starting out, I had a couple of experiences where I did deals with people who expressed interest and made offers and so forth. But I didn't, at that time, it wasn't so as important as it is today. But back then, the tendency was to jump at the first offer that came, no more. And with the first offer that comes, it's not always the best that you can get for your client. So, pardon me, it's far more common today for agents to query multiple editors at the same time to see who steps up. And if they get more than one show of interest, then of course you can leverage one with the other. And it's not just about money. I would say that the most important thing for me, and of course money matters, don't get it wrong, and that's because if you don't know already, agents are paid on a commission basis. So we are directly connected and have a keen vested interest in how this situation stacks up. So while money and the offer is important, I'm also concerned with the enthusiasm of the editor on the receiving end. Because publishing, in my opinion, is the original hurry up and wait business, at least within that context. And you could do a deal and you say that the book is due for publication in fall of 2019, whatever it is. And things happen. The author may not be able to deliver on time. Maybe there's a family challenge or what have you. Maybe once you get inside, once the manuscript is delivered, there's some extraordinary circumstances where the publisher feels the need to delay a bit. Not too long, and then it will scuttle the contract. But there are things that happen, and you want someone at the entry of the project who is so sold on it that he or she will do whatever is needed, including lying down in the hall and screaming if that's necessary, to make sure that that project is not lost in the scramble, that it is given the attention that is due, and that the author is treated always with the greatest of consideration. And that's part of our job, too, to make the match, not just because of money, but because of the heart connection of the person who's involved. And that makes all the difference when the going gets rough, and it often does. So sometimes it's even our responsibility to know if we're going out to an editor, which one is most likely to switch to another company, or do we have a good, a tight enough association with them that we know that editor at house number one is thinking about moving. And if we know that, maybe we won't submit to them because we don't want that project to be committed to house number one, and the acquiring editor is moved over to house number two, and then it becomes an orphan and someone else inherits, and they may not have the same empathy or concern about the project. All of that factors. So that's one point. With cover design, we always want to negotiate that the author has consideration that that they will be shown the how am I say that they will have the opportunity to see the cover, because the cover is the, for the first person to sees it, that's the book. And you want a cover that's representative and makes the point, but in a way that's comfortable. And if there's any one area that we tend to go back and forth with publishers on, even after the deal is done, is with the cover, and sometimes with the title. The title also is frequently changed, and I have to tell my clients from the beginning, look, you may put it in with this title. Don't align yourself so closely with the title that you lose your mind if it comes back from the publisher that they really think it needs to be changed. Consider it. Try to work with them. In the end, and I found this over the years, publishers want it to be a win-win proposition. They're not out to mess with your stuff. That's really not the way it works. Once in a while you might encounter, but typically everybody wants the project to go well. They want it to perform to expectations, to exceed expectations. Other areas in which we negotiate would be for the first one that comes to mind is for what we call subsidiary rights. And I imagine that you also discuss those with your clients.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, though, because I want to talk about rights. I want to go also give our audience some insight into, you mentioned earlier, advances. And then we talk about royalties. And I think people still have this sort of Hollywood-esque vision. She's already shaking her head. Vision of what an advance is and how that works. We think that we're, going to get this big, huge advance in the beginning, and then we're going to become gazillionaires with royalties. So talk about that, and also rights.
Hold that thought.
Okay.
Because we want to know about the money. I'm telling you, we want to know about the money. But we also need to take a break for our sponsor. So we'll be back in just a second.
Are you ready to stand out from the crowd to fulfill your purpose and live the life you really want? Ready to spend more quality time with your family, serve more people, and love the work you do every day? You know you're meant for more, and now's the time to start living your dreams. It's time to fulfill your purpose, and we know just where you should begin. Authorpreneurs Club Unlimited, an online community to help you live the life you've been dreaming of. Join the movement today at authorpreneursclubunlimited.com.
Hey guys, this is Candace from Go Write Something, and if you're struggling to write your book or just to get started, here's an exercise that can help. Sit down and take a minute and make a list of all the reasons why you want to write your book. But in this case, I want you to be completely selfish and write the list of things of what's in it for you. Are you trying to build your business as a speaker? Are you just dying to tell this story? Or are you trying to launch a business based on the information in your book? Make a list of all of those reasons, and once you understand your purpose in writing your book, it'll be a lot easier to design the structure of your book and decide what content to include. Now go write something.
Okay, everyone, we're back. And Janell was just about to break through and tell us all about that money stuff that's going to make us rich so we can buy that house that's on the beach in Malibu. But, we may have to wait a little bit. So, Janell, break it down to us right now. What about this royalty thing? Everybody thinks that I can write a book, I can get 6 figures, I can go sailing off to Malibu, and I'll be fine. Give us the real deal on what's going on with that, honey.
The real deal is, what do you bring to it? Are you famous? Are you famous? Are you a household word? Do people love you? Do they love you so much that they'll go out and buy anything you recommend? I mean, No, that's not true for most of us. We have to establish ourselves. We have to demonstrate that we have the power to move the product. Okay, and that it's something that a mass audience will respond to. So no, most advances are, I would say, in the moderate or modest range, and depending upon the type of book now and the size of the company, that also plays into it, and whether it's a children's book or whether it's a book for adult readership, whether it's in a genre like romance or whether it's a more mainstream commercial kind of. Well, I'm saying mainstream as opposed to romance because romance is considered an entity in its own. And more mainstream being something, but commercial, something like Girl on the Train, which is sold such fantastic numbers and was a breakout book last year. It all depends on the kind of deal and the company, but it is not uncommon to see advances for as little as $5,000. Up to, say, the mid 5 figures, 50,000, depending. Anything above that gets to be what we call, I guess, a hotter project. And to get into the 6 figures, it really has to be outstanding. Perhaps, I'm sure everybody in your audience, if they follow these things, knows that every once in a while you hear about an independently published book that has sold phenomenally well. And editors are knocking themselves out to get to that author in order to make a deal. And there have been a few deals like that have been secured where the author gets 6 figures and then they go on to live happily ever after, I presume. I don't really keep up with that because I don't approach the industry from that dynamic. But like anybody else, if I were to see something that has done really well independently, of course, my antenna would be raised and I would be looking at the project and wondering, I wonder if that could work in a larger environment and if I could be the one to help it. We all do that. So once again, advances really are pretty modest overall. And they tend to be these days even more modest than they were even 10 years ago because the industry, the conventional industry, is under such pressure to perform as the stakes get higher in terms of the bandwidth that's available for people's attention. Is so hotly contested, as I mentioned at the top, with all of the other diversions and demands for our attention, and also publishing has a low profit margin anyway, a slim profit margin. It always did, and now it's tighter than ever. As publishers try to figure out how can we best keep things going when the phenomenon of, here's a big word for everybody, disintermediation. I'm sure my host understand it, but with the audience, that's when digital became hot and more power was made available directly to the author to produce their books on their own or through smaller providers who could deliver the service. And when you have phenomenon like print on demand and wow, so many other wonderful tools that are available, you don't need to go to the big conventional house in order to make your dream come true. Matter of fact, you shouldn't. It all depends on the project.
Right. So tell us about royalties and then the rights in terms of.
When an advance is offered, I'll give an example. Say the advance is $10,000. The advance is always against royalties. So typically in a book deal, if it's a hardcover, the royalty would be 10% of the retail price, sometimes the net price, on for each book. So just for the purpose of this instruction, if the book is $10 and the royalty is 10%, then the author gets $1 or is credited with $1 earned for each book that's sold. If you are presented with a royalty advance of $10,000, which usually is paid one half on signing the contract and the other half when you deliver an acceptable manuscript. The manuscript you present may not be the acceptable manuscript. There's some time there's some time in which the editor who acquires it will have the conversation with the author about certain aspects of character development or such. If it is fiction, or if it's nonfiction, they may want you to add a chapter or develop an idea more fully. Who knows? But once that's done and you turn in that final product, then the second half of the advance is paid to you. Now, again, 10,000 copies of that book must sell at that royalty rate I mentioned in order to earn back the initial money that was paid as a royalty advance, to show the enthusiasm and the support and the commitment of the publisher to the project. That's the way we agents like to consider it, that they're not just paying you for the privilege, but they're offering this in advance to show how much they support. And of course, as agents, we always try to ratchet it up because we want you to have as much support as possible. And in this climate, if the advance is piddling, often the in-house support for the project can be piddling as well. And so agents are we're always fighting against that, trying to always to get the best deal for our authors, because we work for you. That's one thing. We're not working for the publisher. We speak their language, which helps us communicate. But we work for the author, which is why our money comes out, our earnings come out of the royalty advance. If the author is presented with a $10,000 advance, the typical for agents is to earn 15% of that. Okay, but the author is still responsible for selling, or expected to help the book sell at least 10,000 copies in order to earn back. It's not 8,500 copies because of the 15% that the agent has, like that. It's still the 10,000. So
that's a big responsibility. That's a big responsibility for authors because, as many have heard us say, even with traditional book deals, you're responsible for being available. And you've said this already, Janell, being visible, being available, being able to reach an audience that will buy pretty much whatever you tell them to buy.
And not being so much of a prima donna that if the publisher comes to you to ask for support or suggest new ideas or what have you, that you just turn your head and say, who do they think they are? It's your book. Yes, it's your book, but they're in partnership with you. They're committed to you. And so you don't blow them off.
And so if you actually have a job to do, you need to be earning back.
That's correct. And not only earning it back, but of course, everybody hopes that you exceed those expectations.
Right. Of course. So who owns this product once it's produced? Who's got rights to do with it whatever they will?
Depends on which right. What you're doing in a conventional book deal is that you are assigning the rights for a certain amount of time. Usually it's for the life of the copyright in the book. And as you all know, that can go on for quite a few years. What agents attempt to do, and most usually are successful, is in making certain in the context of the contract that the access, to those rights is defined in terms of time. If, for instance, it used to be that when a book went out of print, which is when it's no longer available in print distribution, that you couldn't, that the publisher would no longer be a part of it. Now that so many books are not only assigned to print, but they're also being produced digitally, in theory, they never go. They never lapse. They're always. So agents over time have had been successful in negotiating deals where if the books are not selling at a certain rate of sale, then the rights can be reverted to the author. But yes, for the time of that contract, the rights to that book as a book project, they do reside with the publisher. If they didn't, then the publisher couldn't do what it needs to do. But there are certain subsidiary rights in any book that will always be the property of the author, so long as the author and the agent negotiate for those rights to remain within the author's purview. And for instance, anytime Marie Brown Associates does a deal, the dramatic and performing rights that are held within that overall book project, we make sure that we retain those rights on behalf of the author. Therefore, if the book does very well, and some producer decides that they are interested in the project and they would like to have the privilege of developing it, then the author, with our assistance, the author is responsible for that. The publisher would not be involved in that.
Right.
And it's our feeling that they shouldn't be, because the book is what sets everything. And the author must retain as many rights to the book as possible. I will say that these days, because the information has been showing over time, and perhaps especially in the last year or so, that audio book sales are very strong, and they're getting stronger, that it's often a deal-breaking point when we go into a situation and the publisher wants to retain the audio rights. And their argument is that way we can make even more money on behalf of the author, and we can underscore our initial investment.
Right.
And many of the publishers also have audio departments, so it's easy for them. But anyway, there's always different rights, such as merchandising. What if you want your
Right.
T-shirt and your cups? Or what about theme park rights? That's also a part of it. I'm just putting it out there.
Wow.
Yes,
It can be
there are all
big.
kinds of things.
Even for children's books, plush toys and games.
that
And
evolved from that original idea. So you want to be careful about that. Mhm.
Wow. You gave us so much. My head is like, whoa.
But even when you're publishing independently, all of that is possible. It just depends on the project.
Yeah.
And that really hammers home the fact that we need to, as independent published authors, we need to get smart about this publishing industry as a whole.
Absolutely.
It also lets you know the value and importance of having an agent represent you. Because tell us the truth, really, Janell, do most publishing houses really even want to talk to the author?
No.
In a word, yeah, they don't want to talk.
No, they don't, because you know how our lives are. We were talking about how busy everybody is, and in publishing, it's the same. Nobody has enough time. The editors who acquire the projects, most of them can't even read during the day. Can you believe that? They cannot read because they're so busy going to meetings, answering phone calls, and all of that they don't have time. So they would prefer to see projects that have been vetted, that someone else that they feel has some insight has read before it comes to them. So yes, and they want to keep the riffraff out, I must say, and that has always obtained, but it's more so now than ever. There was a time, maybe as little as 5 years ago, where many children's book publishers would say, "Oh, you don't really need an agent." That was true. It's less so now. It's less so now.
Yeah,
Because you speak the language, right? I mean, it's different if you're talking with someone who knows, if say this term or that term, that I'm not going to have to explain it for 20 minutes and explain to you why this is happening. They can just come to you and say, I want you to tell your client to do blah, blah, blah. And then you have to go back and explain to them without looking like, what are you talking about? I can totally see where that would come in. I mean, you've opened my eyes a lot, and I hope the people who are watching this you've opened their eyes too, because there's a lot more to this. Like Anita says, it's always bigger than the book. Right, Anita?
That's right, honey. It's bigger than the book. And Janell, I think those publishing houses are looking to you to be the gatekeeper and not bring them crappy manuscripts or awful.
I learned too, because what might have been true last month may not be true this month. So there's always a lot of pressure on me to keep up as best I can with industry changing. But it's huge, and it's going at the speed of light, because everything's
So I want to ask one final question of you, which is, especially for our audience of primarily people interested in independent publishing, what's the likelihood of an author who has published independently to use that book, as we've heard, as a bridge to traditional publishing?
It's all about the sales, baby. All about the sales. And I'm saying it like that because that's what I hear. If an independently published book has done a fantastic job and there's buzz about it, or maybe there's not buzz that these folks that we sell to have heard, but that the book has performed in a very admirable way. And again, I mentioned some threshold figures. If I were to see an independently published book that had done 5,000 to 10,000 in the first year, and always it's geared to time, folks. It's not over 5 or 10 years. It's what's out the gate, showing that there's been an orchestrated effort to make this work, and also that not only to make it work, but that it has worked. So it's possible. But I would say to all the people who may see this, if you have just published it, if it has not had time to establish itself, do not go to an agent. We don't care. We can't help you. There's nothing we can do because we are, as representatives, we're held to the same standard. We need to be able to say it's sold X number of copies. It's all about the sales. Yeah. It really is. And if you can hit what is called the bestseller arena, which you know is a very fluid term, it really depends. But if you can attach that label to your project, that's a great thing. It's not easy, but it is possible. And you hear the stories. So if you're that committed and are willing to do what's necessary to make it work at that level, then I hope to meet you someday.
I know that's right.
Awesome. Janell, Agyeman, thank you so much for that insight. Ladies, you have any other questions? I know we could be here all day talking to Janell.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I'm done. Yeah, thank you
for the privilege.
For
you've been awesome.
Here at Write Books That Sell Now, everybody, you've got your marching orders. You make the choice. And it's not even one or the other. It's doing it smart. Whether it's traditional or independent, you've got to have something going for you. Think about that platform and what you're offering, not only to what you might be offering to an agent or a traditional publisher, but certainly what you're offering to your reading audience. So it's always about a good book. Okay. So thanks again, Janell. And as we always do, we're going to have a quick shout out to one of our favorite books. Candace, what have you got for us?
Oh, I think this is so timely, so very timely, because as Janell mentioned, the quality of your manuscript makes a big difference in whether or not she can do anything with your book. But guess what? Even if you're publishing independently, the quality of your manuscript makes a big difference as to whether or not anyone will actually want to buy and read your book. People care. And writing can seem like if you were not a natural born writer, you don't feel like that's your thing, it can seem like this magical thing that you can't quite get a hold of. Like it can seem like a natural talent that you have to be born with, but it's not. Some people are better at it naturally than others, but it is a skill that can be learned. And one of my favorite books, and Anita, I know this is one of your favorites too. So
you can't wait.
One of my favorite books for people who really want to develop in the craft as a writer, but also want to live inside of that writing life. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott.
Yay!
If you can see it, let's see. My light is right on it. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And so if you know, most writers or anyone in the literary world, this is a classic. They've read it. They have it on their shelf. They have it on their nightstand. They've read it many times, but it deals with some of the things. It's under my
pillow.
It should be. I actually sleep with my Kindle. I have to sleep with my Kindle under my pillow, but that's another story. Just in case I wake up. But it deals with simple things like perfectionism that you're going to run into in the writing process, character and plot. And even if you're writing nonfiction, say you're writing a memoir, those things are relevant. Dialogue, setting, really simple stuff that may seem overwhelming, but they're short chapters. She gives you little things you can do to make your writing just a much more pleasant process, but in the end to have a better product that people actually want to buy. It's Bird by Bird. I know you can't see it because my light's blowing it out, but it's Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, and it's a must read for anyone who wants to be an author.
And she's just a joy to read. It's comical. She's got some little funny stuff in there, and she's just amazing. So
she is.
Love that. All right, everybody, we have come to the end of another great episode of Write Books That Sell Now, the podcast. We hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about the real life, the real world of what a literary agent does from our phenomenal guest, Janell Agyeman. And of course, you know, you can follow us on Facebook at Write Books That Sell Now. We certainly hope that you will leave a review of this podcast on iTunes, add your comments. You know, when you leave reviews for our podcast, it actually helps other people find us better and easier. So be sure to share the podcast and the information with your other literary friends. And as I said, follow us on Facebook. You can always find us on writebooksthatsellnow.com. And we will see you on the next episode. Until then, keep writing.
Thanks for listening. Find out more about becoming an author and making the most of your book at writebooksthatsellnow.com.